Hello, and welcome to day 41 of Dungeon 23. Today we're going to be making another addition onto the skeleton room, and I do have something special. It is going to have a 10-foot doorway, so it's going to be a bit of a larger room, but it's going to have a large thing in it that, as I said, is going to be special. Let's quickly just sketch out the room. Let's do here, here, here. Very basic room. And we're going to put something right here. And that's going to be a piano. Oh, let's really quickly set all these guys to being. There we are. Alrighty, so let's put this guy here. Let's make him pretty big. Now, what does the piano do? It has two things. Well, actually three, technically. The first one being that let's zoom in so I can actually see what I'm writing here. For those of you who don't know, because I never mentioned it, I'm using my television as my screen, so it's pretty low resolution, and it's also far away from me, so it's hard to kind of read the little text. I guess I could technically increase the size, I think. Bold, italic, strike through, superscript, subscript, table. Alright, I'm not going to mess with that yet. So, playing the piano will immediately alert the blind hook horror as well as any other wandering monsters at apply. I say apply because obviously like the bats aren't going to be attracted to the piano. Like they're going to be like startled. They may change rooms, but they're not going to be attracted to it. Whereas the hook horror is going to, come after you, and any other kind of wandering monsters we decide to put in here. I don't have any real plans for another wandering monster on this level, but that could change if I come up with something or if someone suggests something interesting. When a bard uses the piano to perform their bardic inspiration. Whoop. Add to the So what this means is that when you do your bardic inspiration, it's not just a d6, it's a d6 plus 2. And that's pretty powerful. Or it should just be 1. Let's just do 1. Because that way it's a minimum of 2 instead of a minimum of 1. Again, still really good. And here's kind of the downside. DC 17. Strength. Check is needed to push the piano 5 feet. It's a piano, it's heavy, it's hard to move, and you're gonna need a strength check to actually push it. Now, if you have like the larger size, or like any of the larger size, or the powerful build, strong back, those kind of things, so powerful build and similar abilities, lower the DC to, let's do 14. To push it 10 feet or only 5 on failure. So that way it is, they could assume it has like a orc or a minotaur or any other thing like that. They could still push it, but they could push it further if they, try harder. So like an orc bard could probably, it's gonna take a while, but they could probably take this wherever they want to. Another thing is you could use the piano to block doorways. So you could just slowly push this guy and block this doorway. Now granted, the piano does have like hit points. In fact, we're gonna put that right here actually. So this is the bars. You're supposed to have a character. You could have a character sheet tied to it. I don't think it does. Well, it doesn't have one now. But you could put your attributes here. Let's see here. Yeah, so we don't have a character sheet to it. So we're just going to use the typical of green is health and blue is armor class. That's generally how I do it. So for armor class, let me look up a reference really quick. Okay, so wood and bone have an AC of 15 for objects, but iron and steel have an AC of 19. And because it's also wood but also metal because of the pipes, also, yeah, it has the pipe organ pipes, even though it's like a piano. I like the Fallout, Minecraft, Team Fortress 2 style of design where it doesn't necessarily have to be like realistic or mechanically functional. It just has to look like the thing. Take the heavy machine gun from Fallout 4. That has no way of actually functioning. It looks ridiculous from like an engineering perspective and from a mechanical perspective. But if you look at that thing, that looks like a machine gun. And this looks like, when you imagine like pianos and organs and pipes and all that stuff, this is what it looks like. And that's what really matters. Especially when we're doing like a token that's supposed to represent not just pianos, but pianos, organs, and very similar things, Back on topic. So I'm going to give it an AC of 16 to signify that it's not just wood, but also wood and metal and all that other stuff. And for its actual health. Now hit points are based on its actual size, not really the material, which is weird. Oh, there's basically two kinds of items. There's fragile and then there's resilient items. Fragile items are things like a tiny fragile item would be like a bottle or a cup or a mirror, like a hand mirror. And then you have like a resilient tiny item, which will be like a rock, a goblet that's made of metal, like a horseshoe, things like that. And a fragile thing typically has like 1d4, whereas a resilient will have 2d4. And then you have small things, which a fragile one will have 1d6, and a resilient one will have like 3d6. Now, for a large object that's resilient, it's 5d10 for an average of 27. So we're actually going to give this HP 35 an account of all the metal and bits that are in it. So 35. We're just going to call this grand piano. Let's give it a nameplate here. And save settings. And yeah, the green one always defaults to HP. So you could just do like minus 15 or 23. It'll like easily subtract. So 35. Yeah, you just type in the number you want it to be, or you just do minus or plus, and that's really useful for how much damage you want to do. Although, a neat little trick that makes keeping track of enemy health a lot easier, if you don't want to use like the built-in systems for like Roll20, or I imagine that D&D Beyond has, but again, no one uses D&D Beyond because Wizard of Coast sucks, or at least I don't. If you have like just like a character sheet, especially when it's physical, it's a lot easier to count up than to subtract. So just track the damage dealt to it instead of how much health it has remaining. Because how often a creature or thing is going to heal is less often than it's going to get damaged in most cases. So it's a lot easier to just subtract from the damage dealt to heal than it is to subtract from the total health to do damage. And then of course once the total damage done that you've kept track of surpasses its health, then it just dies. And what's great about that is you can just have a calculator open and you can just count up on your calculator. So yeah, counting up, super useful. And if you'd want to like fudge your enemy's health, which you shouldn't really do, because it's kind of, I don't want to say scummy, but it's disingenuous, then it makes that easier. But I just like it because it's it's easier to do math, adding than subtracting. And on top of that, it also gives you a better idea about how much damage your players are doing per round. So, we have our piano. It gives you a +1 to your bardic inspiration. It's also like a valuable grand piano, although you're probably not going to be able to take it up to the surface on account of the fact that it's big. You could push it 5 feet if you have a good enough strength, or push it 10 feet if you have really good strength. And you could block doorways. And also, there's a very finite amount of space you could move it to on account of the fact that, again, like being able to take it out, some rooms just have small doorways. You can't take it upstairs because there's just no way to get it through. Maybe deeper in the dungeon there'll be like a magic item that could shrink something, so you could take this with you. And I'll basically reward backtracking. And that's something we should definitely plan for, is having things in a level that can't really be used quite yet, and you could come back to it later. But for right now, we're just going to focus on, what we have here. So yeah, that's our piano, that's our room, it's our gimmick. If you have any other ideas, comment them down. Good for the algorithm. Comments are really good for algorithms. So is liking, subscribing, all that crap. And yeah, I apologize for the poor quality. It's not going to get any better.